So this is a panel that we do every year. There are two reasons we do this. One is we have to look at India as a market from through two different lenses. One is how this is a market for the end user standpoint, from the end user standpoint, how developers see this as a market, not just people who are developing from India, but also people who have been developing games for across the world, right? And then also looking at from a perspective of people who are building games from here. Again, not just for India, but also for global market. So, like I said, my name is Imtiaz Hussain, and I'm the co-founder of a company called Yesgnome, mobile gaming studio. And before I, hand it over for an introduction from all the panelists, I would also like to quickly, can you guys do a quick show of hands? How many of you guys are attending this event for the first time? Wow, that's massive. Good. That's a growing community. Yeah. So great. Thank you so much for coming. As you guys know, this is possibly one only gaming event across the world which is done by the community, non-profit, and it's what we call is for the industry by the industry. There are like 40 volunteers from 25 different companies who are volunteering this event to make this happen. So, and also thanks to all the sponsors, some of them are actually part of this. So thank you so much. And so why don't you start, Anirudh, why don't you start from there? Why don't you give a quick introduction and maybe you can talk about what are you reading these days? What are you reading these days? Reading? Yeah, reading or?
Yeah. Hey guys, this is Anirudh. I'm the founder of Loco, India's largest game streaming platform. It's a platform where people come and watch games. Recently also a place where people are broadcasting their marriages. Um, so they're really spending a lot of time on there. And recently I've actually started reading books by the founders of India. So Jawaharlal Nehru's Discovery of India and then Gandhi's Experiments for Truth. And it's amazing that you feel like they're with you, even though they're obviously long gone. So I just had this like thing of just going back and seeing why they started everything
Wonderful.
and how they were motivated. So yeah, so that's what I'm reading right now.
Good, good. Deependra?
Yeah, hi, my name is Deependra. I lead business development for games across APJ for AWS. In terms of reading, I started reading a book called Start With Why. And
Start with why.
I've just started it, right? But the thesis is that, before you do anything, ask why. Why are we doing this conference? Why are we participating in the panel?
Yeah.
Why are some companies profitable? Why are companies like this? They have massive fan following from the gamers. So, yeah.
Why
Start
should
with the
they
basic.
sit here now?
Why should they sit here? I think you should ask that question, but don't walk away.
Cool.
If you don't
Cool.
get the answer, we'll give you the answer.
Great. You have a mic.
Hi, thank you for having me here. It's such a wonderful opportunity to actually kind of share thoughts with all of you guys who build such beautiful businesses. I have actually looked up to some of the businesses that you both have built, and of course you've supported the ecosystem for a very long time. I'm Saumya. I'm one of the co-founders of Winzo Games. It's a vernacular gaming venture based out of New Delhi. We are something like a Netflix of gaming with 100 million register user base that we've clocked recently. And what I'm reading, I mean, so the gaming ecosystem is right now seeing a lot of flux, and I find myself reading a lot on law and regulatory side of how the world is moving in tech, in data privacy, and definitely on gaming. So that's what I'd been reading for last 6 months.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. So.
Hello. My name is Roby. I'm the founder and CEO of Super Gaming. We're a game studio based in Pune in Singapore. Looking to put India on the global gaming map. Built games for the last 7 years, essentially in the multiplayer space. About 200 million people play a game that we've built. Very excited about building a new game that's coming out later this year, early next year, called Indus. From what I'm reading 2 books actually. I read books for therapy. So reading 2 books right now. One is called The Messy Middle by Scott Blesky. Essentially, great to start a project, great when you finish a project. There's always the messy middle to deal with. And I'm reading a second book called Discipline by Ryan Holiday, which is my favorite author.
Great, great. So I'll start with the questions, and I think the way we start this conversation is primarily talking about how things are with the gaming industry. And 2021 was amazing. Like many of you know that a lot of people got acquired, and a lot of people were starting the studios, and with whatever happening with global economy, things are, we can categorize this as it's a decent year so far, right? And but what I'm also noticing across the world, that studios are focusing in just building and not experimenting at all, right? Do you see this trend? How do you say it? Like, Anirudh, do you want to start, and then others can cover that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, 21 was obviously driven by where interest rates were. It was a crazy time. We benefited from that. We raised the largest round in gaming in India at Series A level. But that was not only about our business, but also where the market was. But I think it also shows you how big the opportunity is for every person sitting here, right? And I think 22 has been, and 23 will be a great test of what your real conviction is, right? I know many investors who, we were just discussing before, like, they don't know the G of gaming, right? They have no conviction. Last year, when the going was good, they just got under the train. And it's true for every single other big venture in any company today, right? Including our own. The low conviction bets will go out of the door. So I think it's a great time for most startups actually to build something. For the first time in a long time, and I have some team members in the audience, I can actually get people at relatively reasonable salaries. We're also seeing people willing to partner at a deeper level, which they weren't willing to partner without money earlier. So I think there are always positives also of where we are in terms of the economic cycle, but the Indian opportunity remains just as exciting. And I think, I know I've known Winzo's journey for a while as well, and I think we've seen the ups and downs before. This is not the first down we've seen at all.
Sure.
And there were times when raising $2 million used to be tough. Today, a lot of people get it in the first time they meet an investor. So I think there is much more conviction, and I think the Indian gaming story is much better understood. And I think whether it's the RMG guys, whether it's the game studios, they've all, underlined and shown that story. So I think it's not all terrible.
Sure. And Deependra, how do you see this? Because you are from an infrastructure and backend and cloud, and how do you see that? Is that the trend that you see in the Indian developer ecosystem where they're focusing and just building? And before that, one quick question: how many of you are either running a startup or part of a startup right now? Show of hand, please. Okay, good. I just wanted to understand.
Careers at loco.gg. आप सब apply कर सकते हैं.
I was expecting more number of hands to go up.
Sure, go on.
Yeah, so as Anirudh said, the Indian gaming story is much better understood now, right? So there is acceptance that this sector is there to stay. It's growing very fast. I think we just did a report launch this morning, expected to grow at 27%, reaching $8.5 billion in 5 years. That's not small. The base is also not small anymore, right? There's a lot of vibrancy. There's a lot of new companies as well as incumbents who are building great businesses. So in terms of building versus experimenting, I think, the incumbents, they of course are focusing on their business. There were significant spends during IPL, even during World Cup, right? We have seen non-fantasy sports companies spend on IPL to acquire players, and that was an experiment which has worked well for them. So building is happening. On the experimenting side, I think the incumbents are experimenting with newer technologies, right? This is also a year where Web3 sort of got a lot of momentum. NFTs, Metaverse is a little far away still, but game economies and Roby is building something around that, right? So experimentation is happening around that front. But when it comes to the startup story, the Indian startup story, including the gaming startup story, is very intact. So for example, this year also we expect more than $500 million to be raised. And even if we exclude the larger rounds, a significant portion of that will be raised by early stage startups. So that is happening, and some of the best startups have come out during such down cycles. So we are seeing both a mix of building and experimenting.
Understood.
And I think that's going to continue.
Sure. And how do you see Saumya?
Yeah, I think so. We started back in 2017, and like Anirudh said beautifully, actually, he took me back to the time when we used to have our first pitch in India to raise capital, and we used to find it really difficult to even discuss gaming as an ecosystem. And now when we look at it, everybody's proactively looking to put in capital in the space. Now what it does is that when there is capital pushed into an ecosystem, you start attracting the best of talent, right? That's what happened in cab hailing, Ola, Uber. That's what happened in food delivery. there was capital that came into the ecosystem, and then there was tech talent that flocked into the ecosystem. There was, the best minds of the country moved into those ecosystems to build that ecosystem, right? And I think we are seeing the stark difference between the kind of people who wanted to give their time, their passion, their effort to gaming back in 2017 when we just started, and what we experience now. There's a huge difference. Of course, the entire ecosystem in itself accelerated between the two waves of COVID, where digital adoption just propelled us ahead by 5 years, and we saw a lot more number of people from tier 2, tier 3, 5 Bharat coming onto smartphone, connecting to the internet, and then just consuming gaming as a content, as a boilerplate activity rather. So that's
Sure.
something that we experienced, and it was amazing. We feel that India is the largest right now opportunity on the global map in the space of gaming.
How many of you feel that? Lovely. Great. Great. Robbie, what are your opinion? So, yeah, please go on.
So, just to give context to the question, what's the time and space that we are seeing 2021 versus 2022? 2021, great year for expansion. I'm actually thankful that we got a couple of years to keep our head down during COVID and quarantine. Even if we wanted to do something, we couldn't do, so we ended up building a great game. I don't think that's an opportunity that's available to me anywhere, anytime now. So I'm really thankful for those 2 years in quarantine, especially for my team. I mean, we used to only meet in the evenings at the gym, but ensure that whole day we kind of made Indus, and that was really for us really big. We grew from being a 75% studio to about 170. So in those 2 years of quarantine, wow. So that was a huge expansion year. I don't think of this year as anything different. I don't think of this year as anything different. I think the down markets are a great time simply because all the tourists go away and the real residents stay. For me, I've been a game founder for about 14 years, so seen multiple ups and downs of it. What I'm really excited about in 2022, though, is blockchain, Web3 going mainstream. And earlier, everybody was touristy, flocking to all of the Web3 parts. Now the real people stay who understand what to do inside of it. And I think that's really the big differentiator for me from a 2022 perspective.
Yeah. So, on those lines, I would also like to understand from the user standpoint. I'm sure the audience here would also like to know. India as a market is known for, hey, there are only casual game players there, right? And if you, Saumya and Roby, if you can tell us, is the trend changing now? Are there more mid-core, hardcore focused people, that kind of, clans coming out from India? How do you?
Sure. So, just I'm going to essentially iterate what the panel from the morning, which really iterated all of this, which says the fastest growing segments are mid-core, 35% year-on-year growth. And I think of it as from 2 or 3 cultural places. I've been in the space for about 10 years. Earlier, when you think about it, device access, internet access, till about 2017, till Jio kind of came in, was really slow. You to download a big game would be really hard. The Jio revolution, cheap phones, but also people growing up. Remember that the mobile phone is now 10, 12 years old. Every kid has grown up playing those games. The adult audiences, have never played a game in their life, so they can only play a certain section of games. But today, there's a large, and India is a very young population, so there's a large population of people who grew up playing the NFSs, the every kind of shooter, PUBG, every kind of game inside of it. And I think that's where we saw massive adoption.
Sure.
Even from a company perspective, like we say that we used to hire trespassers. Now we get people who are the most qualified, studied at the best universities and know exactly what kind of game they want to make.
Understood. And is 5G also contributing there?
Too early, but
yeah. And how do you see that, Saumya?
Of course, we definitely believe that, the country does definitely need AAA games, mid-core games. Of course, casual gaming where, your learning curve to get onto the game and to spend small bite-size, sessions would continue to be a thing. But we definitely see a trend where there's a need and people want to spend more time on, assets where you are more engaged, and that's definitely your mid-core games. We actually, as a company, we definitely believe that there's a need for that, and there's a space which is in the country currently on content side where something can be created. And with that thought, we also launched a fund earlier this year, where we started looking for opportunities to invest on ideas that can create, culturally relevant parallels of a BGMI and a Free Fire within this country, if I may say. So yeah, so we definitely see a very huge, massive, growing space for that segment of content.
And for a platform like yours, Anirudh, a streaming platform, do you see that trend where people are watching more mid-core? And
Yeah, I think some of the things that are not well understood about gaming, right? Gaming is not a luxury. If you grow up in a town where you don't have a mall, where you don't have a cinema, Netflix costs $20 a month, where are you going to spend your time? And then the second thing is, how do you meet other people, right? And I don't meet other people from a dating perspective. Just learn about the world. Like for me, as a kid, my family didn't go to many vacations, etc. So it was all about watching sport. Like every city, like when I visit, the first thing I look for is, where's that stadium that I saw growing up, right? Today, when you're in PUBG Mobile or BGMI, whatever, any game that you're playing and you're hanging out, that's how you learn about each other. And they'll ask you, like, how things in your city, what's going on, where do you shop? And these are conversations I've had because I spend an inordinate amount of time playing these games. Right? So I think games as a social hangout space is continuously happening in different games. What's happened now with a platform like ours is because people can come together and watch, they also form community there. And streamers then play different games. And people ask, कि भाई ये कौन सा game है? ये मैं कैसे खेल सकता हूँ? And then PC games actually weirdly become aspirational, where it's like, I can't play it, but I want you to play it so I can also enjoy with you. So it's like, the same effect as when I was younger and I used to go to this store called Atul Arcade and then, play Mario, and then you'd sit behind the guy and say, do well for us, right? You're like cheering on the guy to beat the system. So I think that arcade effect is happening, and you'd not believe, if you watch the content on Loco, the creativity that people have shown when you hand them something like a Minecraft or you do something like GTA. It's insane. I started playing GTA again because there's these Malayalam streamers who are just playing GTA and having so much fun that I started playing it, much to the dismay of my wife. She's like, what is this violent game and all that? But it's so fun. And the same thing on Minecraft. There are people who are basically building almost like mini series inside Minecraft. I mean, he's like, जैसे आपने देखा है गेम ऑफ थ्रोन्स में जैसे होता है वैसे ही मैंने बनाया है, यहाँ पे आके मैं एक बिल्डिंग उसकी तोड़ देता हूँ, अगले एपिसोड में ये होगा, right? I never thought like that's how they would use Minecraft, right? So I think it's also a outlet for creativity like we haven't seen before, and as more and more games come, you're actually seeing it reflect the entertainment industry, where platforms like Winzo, they do give you the short form burst, right? Because they're spending maybe they spend 20 sessions of 3 minutes each. On our platforms, it's the opposite. It's more like a longer form OTT viewing, where it's like 15, 20 minutes, 2 sessions. And they just come and hang out and they leave. So it's a really, really, I think, unprecedented time to be in gaming.
Sure, I'm sure. And quick check here with the audience here. How many of you are building casual games? I mean, or working for a company which builds casual games? And the rest of our mid-core, hardcore games, is that what it is? How many of you building mid-core games? All right. Okay, cool, great, guys. So going on with that, Deependra, if I may ask, since AWS provides so many tools out there, and do you see the trend where historically we have been building from this part of the world a lot of developers who are building casual games? Now, is the trend changing where you see, hey, more multiplayers and high-end graphics and those kind of infrastructure has been used, or how do you see that?
Absolutely. 1 or 2 years back, we've been participating in these panels for a long time. The question that was being asked, when will we see the first AAA game coming out of India, right? But that question has already been answered. So there are multiple studios, multiple companies which are developing AAA games, and it requires investment, time, patience. A AAA game takes from a year to up to 3-4 years to build, and timeline, story, etc. It requires a lot of investment. But that is already happening. So I am aware of at least 4 games, which are either in stages of development or some sort of story line development, etc. There may be more, which I may not be aware of, right? But that is phenomenal. Sure. And all of those four are mobile first, right? Because that's where the accessibility is. You want to reach a wide number of players. India has never been a market for PC and mobile and console. From a development perspective, it's always been mobile first, and that's what is happening. So yes, definitely that is one part. Secondly, on the other hand, what we are seeing is, and people are building casual games, right? They are trying to build more feature-rich casual games. Sure. Even RMG games. If I talk about fantasy sports have not evolved over since the last 3-4 years. Since the time they were launched. But now fantasy sports is also evolving. People are saying, okay, you play a game when the match is happening, but what about the time when the match is not happening, right? So they are NFT elements. They are creating trading elements, open trading. Multiple forms are coming in. So that is also evolving, but especially in casual games. And Anirudh was mentioning earlier that games are a place to hang out. So what we have seen work best is that engagement is driven by the social element, right? If you are able to form a community, if you are playing it with the family, with friends, with set of colleagues, and games become a place to hang out, whether you're able to meet them physically or not, that is what is driving engagement. So feature-rich game development, be it a AAA, with heavy graphics, storyline, or be it casual, where it's a place to hang out. Actually, that is what we are seeing a lot of companies investing time and effort in.
Great. And Saumya and Roby, this question comes in every conversation that I get into where they talk about India gaming market. So they always feel that it's very difficult to monetize in India. Now, do you see that trend is changing? Since you guys are game developers and platform by yourself.
So, it's a very pertinent question, Imtiaz, because when we started back in 2017, this is the second venture for both Pawan and I. The first one was Zorooms and Zostel. It was a completely different industry, platform play, underutilized assets. That time, your hotels, budget hotels, and looking at a way to monetize them better. When we looked at gaming ecosystem back in 2017, we felt it was, of course, for the end user, it was very fragmented. But a more glaring issue was the lack of monetization model, which was scalable and which would bring these organizations and models to profit. And we said, okay, maybe culturally in-app purchase is not what we are talking about. There could be some other way that we can get the user to believe and pay. And we went the microtransaction way. Of course, UPI opened a new world for us. We keep calling it the eighth wonder of the world, right? It got yes, absolutely. I mean, the biggest payment platform on the globe, right? Which is connecting 1.3 billion people to make payments day in and out. Actually, 2 out of every 500 payments on UPI every single day is happening on Winzo platform. And we felt that the power of microtransaction and a platform which is monetized on back of microtransactions over maybe subscription models would work. But of course, over the years, we are seeing even subscriptions working very well in India. You definitely have games, at least 5 games are clocking more than $100 million in India annually. So well, we are seeing things change definitely.
Sure, I'm sure there will be a lot of amazing stories coming out.
So, Lumika report this morning actually said that in-app purchases is growing fastest in India, 40% year on year. Still seeing it, and what's changed is the audience consuming all of it. Like my kid is not going to spend 10 minutes asking me whether he wants to spend, let's say, 1,000 rupees on a good game. And that's really the problem of having your credit card on all devices, but separate problem. But seeing a lot of people have the willingness to pay and being matched by the infrastructure catching up for the ability to pay, or for the infrastructure to pay for it, is kind of what we are seeing collide. And obviously, COVID accelerated, quarantine accelerated digital payments significantly. So we're kind of seeing all of these pieces come in, but also seeing people now recognize gaming as the best ROI on entertainment. Sure. So people are not afraid of spending money on it. They're not afraid of spending money on Loco, of kind of tipping their favorite streamer, getting a shout out inside of it. And I think that's really what we're going to see in a very young population. That's really the population coming online. 600, 700 million people under the age of 25. Yep. That's really what we'll see.
Sure. And keeping with that, going on to the development side a little bit from India. So tech talent is like the demand for tech talent is all-time high. And I'm sure a lot of companies were struggling there. So, what do you think the measures someone has to take, to build the technical? You own a platform which is very highly complex and streaming platform. So what measures someone should take to build that amazing team and tech team out there?
I can't hear you too well.
Sorry. So what I'm saying is the tech talent is like all-time high right now in terms of the demand. So what measures a company needs to take to build an amazing team and for next couple of years? And obviously, Deependra, you also handle that infrastructure, right? So would love to understand from your standpoint.
Yeah, look, I think at some point, Indian tech companies have to also be tech companies in some sense. They have to stop resembling large factories, right? I mean, WhatsApp was built by, less than 100 people, right? And so I think it's important to pay people well and find the 10xers. So as far as Loco is concerned, we've actually not increased our team size all that much through like what's been crazy growth. And what that means is you promote internally, and how we say in our platforms is like retention is growth. Till you have retention, you're not going to have growth. So there's no point going out of the market and continuously inflating prices for others and for yourself in the process. Retain your talent and put some trust in them that they can do things above and beyond what they even think, right? I mean, that's the whole point of a startup. In a bigger company, it would take you many years to get there. So give them opportunities, and there'll be some fails, but there'll be also massive wins. You can identify new leaders. So from a tech point of view, what we've seen is actually great talent is now available, and we are lucky that gaming is considered a hot/sexy sector. So it's less difficult to attract people than say in fintech or something where they're like, "Abhi main bank mein kya kaam karunga?" Whereas this is like they play the game, for example, or they're interested in some parts of the scale that companies like ours can offer, which many others don't have, right? So I think that's important, and of course, building an employer brand and knowledge sharing, which is something even we internally have not done extremely well, and it's a place where we want to improve as well. That's something that we can do a much better job on. And I think doing that also gives you awareness amongst the tech community that hey, you're doing some work, and I think companies in the West have done an extremely good job of that. I think that's something that we also want to improve on.
Sure. Deepinder, you have any thoughts around?
Yeah, so I have a view that the way mobile and data democratize access to games and multiple other apps, etc., the development in cloud and technology is democratizing, how people are able to develop games fast and super fast. So today, if you have an idea, whether you're a founder, a developer, a techie or not, you have tools available which help you to develop games very fast, and that's helping because you have services available out of the box. So, for example, if you want to build a multiplayer game, and you want it to scale to millions of users when there is peak
Sure.
and come down, when there is no demand, you have managed services like Amazon Game Lift, etc., right? And they allow you to manage your infrastructure automatically, almost automatically. Now, when you're building a game, there are AI, ML, and analytics services which you need to have. Like, for example, you need to provide a safe environment, a clean environment. There's no toxicity, there's no toxic behavior, no toxic language. You want interoperability in terms of languages because, multiple people are coming onto the same platform. You want to deliver very personalized games, content to your players. You want to design levels, which are not very hard. Otherwise, people drop off, and which are not very easy because then it becomes boring. And you also want to monetize and retain and engage. You want the players to come back. So all of that is done using technology, right? But the talent available out there, which actually understands this technology very well, is there, but it's already working in some companies, right? So we need to train more people, and we need to ensure that this talent is widely available for startups across the spectrum. And we at AWS are aware of this, and we have certain training and certification programs where companies can actually sponsor some of their employees to go through the trainings, and there are benefits which they get also, so the cost is negligible. Or people can take up certification courses by themselves. So that is what we do very actively. We have a team which focuses on training and certification, and the intent is to create more tech talent, especially for games.
Sure. Guys, quick check on the sound. You guys hear us okay, right? Or you have any? Okay, fine. Cool. Great. So one thing that we have been noticing, a lot of reports says that there is an upward trend, that we see from the tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities and all. And I think Winzo has done an amazing job there. If people here sitting who wants to go after that market, do you have any advice and tips there?
No, really humbled. Thank you. We did start thinking that, hey, we want to build for Bharat. And there were two reasons for it. One, of course, back in again, 17, 18, you had first-time smartphone users thanks to geo solving internet. more economical smartphones getting distributed across the country. And we felt that's the market that is going to grow significantly. Today we have 500 million, north of 500 million smartphone users, and that's only growing significantly. And most part of this growth was coming from very, very deep pockets of the country. Now, this audience, the parallel to no other audience on the world, because they never went on to a laptop and a desktop and tab and all of that journey. They got onto a smartphone for the first time after a decade of e-commerce and internet era being in India. And when we looked at that audience, we felt that it was very underserved. And when I say underserved, I basically mean to say culturally relevant content made for them. Keeping them and their world and their universe in mind without expecting that the audience is going to adapt to a product which was made in the West, and then we evolved to adapt to that product. So we said that we need to solve at that point. And I think it was an approach from a product point of view, right from the design to the how we reach the audience to how we talk to the audience, at the heart of the company, that really helped us solve for that market. Of course, we're still solving. We don't feel that we have done that job completely yet. We are only 100 million registered users, and we have rest of the country left. But that's what we have done so far.
Yeah, great work there, guys. So, Robbie, Robbie's game in this got featured in Times Square, and also um, there was an article in Financial Times too across the world. So that's great. So, are we ready to go on to the top charts of global market? And how do you see this?
Sure, why not? So essentially, when we some hindsight from actually running games for a very long time. Masgana game is played by about 65 million users. Haven't spent any money on user acquisition. Players all over the world play it. Learned from that. From 2016, I actually run Diwali as an event inside of it. So I've got a lot of people in the US call me and say, Robbie, what's Diwali? And I have to explain it's Festival of Lights. Like today you have your kids celebrating Halloween, but it's not really a festival from here. But we did that 6 years ago. And what we learned from that is, and this is again an emphasis, reinforcement of why I started this company. I was a SaaS developer, 10 years backend engineer, made iOS apps for about 7 years. Combined both of those to kind of build real-time multiplayer games. Because gamers or game developers were really my community, my breed. For most other professions, you had to put a gun to somebody's head to get him to write code or write good code. But in our case, our game developers are so passionate that they'll be there till the game ships. And that's something that I realized that's the industry that I wanted to be part of. And that's really how we built Super. Two things from are we ready for the world perspective? Sure. I've kind of looked at being a student of history and said that, hey, the early years, all the Nordics won because they were ready. When the iPhone, Androids came out, this was really the Nokia and Ericsson ecosystem that was already building for mobile. They suddenly got a much better screen and they kind of dominated. Today, you see China dominate, but that's because for 10 years, everybody who had to build or get access to 500 million Chinese had to go establish a subsidiary inside of China, build a studio there. Obviously, they learned from it, and now they kind of dominate. Every month, more than $2 billion is earned by 40 Chinese studios. That's really the time that's needed. What we kind of understood structurally is saying that, hey, here are the pieces that you need to get right, build up. So we actually ended up building a platform. All of our insights to making every game. We made 15 games, 5 worked, 10 didn't, was baked into that platform. Today with Web3, we find ourselves ready. The platform is a significant advantage because in design of Web2 games, I would say that the platform or your game design platform is really a prerequisite to start. But today, if you don't have a platform to control economy, you're dead. You can't really operate a Web3 game. And that's really our significant advantage. So I always say that, hey, if you're building with one eye towards the future, there will come a time which is your time to shine. We chose to tell a story of Indus, which I'm sure everybody learned in their textbooks, but probably don't know enough of. So we sold a story which says that what if the Indus Valley civilization didn't die, but flew off to a different galaxy, and you're now discovering this galaxy in the year 2500. Very inspired by what the movie Black Panther did for Afrofuturism. It combined the glorious past of Africa, but also built Wakanda as the most futuristic city in the world. I think, after seeing that movie, the way that people look at the African diaspora changed. It actually said being black is cool. I'm doing being brown is cool. There's 1.5 billion of us, so we should be cool. So I'm actually building the Wakanda of India and kind of showcasing it, both from an Indian perspective, which is what you like because it's local, but it's also consumed everywhere in the world because it's exotic. Our story of our glorious civilization, our mythology has never been sold on this big screen unless you played Uncharted Lost Legacy for 22 minutes. But that's really what we're doing and putting it on the global scale. The Times Square article happened because the New York diaspora decided to put it up there.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. We just keep getting a lot more articles written about not just Indus, but our concept, our theory of Indo-futurism.
Sure. Great, congratulations on that Times Square featuring there. So Anirudh, I want to always ask about this influences, right? They're very critical in terms of the success of the title, right? And how much that is important to have a title be successful in India? Influencer do they play a big role in India as well?
You're talking about the influences, right?
Yeah, influencers. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, they're critical. There's no, if you put your game on Play Store, it's insufficient, right? And of course, Google tax is something we can talk about another time. So I like talking about that subject as well. But I think influencers help your game get noticed. And you may think that the top influencer is not available to you, but that's completely okay. For you, you're at 0 users, right? So even small influencers can make a big difference. And in fact, often a micro influencer or someone with a smaller community but more passionate community is more effective. So I think when you're making the game today, you have to think about how you're going to use those influencers. So if you're a casual games, you'll have to see how they're going to make it fun, what videos can they make for it. If you're making a more kind of FPS type of game with a world in it, kind of like what Roby's making, you'd think about how it's going to be streamed, because people are going to stream the game, and how they're going to interact with other people in the game. So I think you have to think of the influencers as a very critical part of your marketing mix. And honestly, it's if you look at the old way of advertising, where they used to talk about ATL and BTL, I think of these guys now as the ATL spend. It's not spend you can obviously just track as easily, but it's a very effective spend. And honestly, our go-to-market with Loco initially was that. I know Winzo has a great, the Superstar program, I think, I forget what it's called, yeah. So, so I think, it's critical, and you will see that the influencers also get very passionate about certain games, right?
Sure. So a follow-up to that, I would, not to interrupt there, but with 5G coming in, do you see a lot of content creators coming in on that?
100%, 100%. I actually think, before Loco, I also started a content company which has done quite well. We benefited from 4G coming in, right? Because everywhere around you, you're just watching videos.
Sure.
I think you're going to see the next generation of that in 5G, when people are going to be able to play these games. The kind of latency of some of the stuff will come down. You'll get a much better interactive experience. And I think you're going to see the telcos, and you're already seeing the first signs of that push as well, because with the geo business model, which has challenged the old sort of oligopolies, it's all about who's going to use data fastest, right? So, when you play his game, stream it on a platform, like, that's going to use a lot of data, right? And that's, that's what people are going to pay with effectively, right? And so you're going to see infrastructure level support for gaming also coming in. So, and look, in India, we've seen hyper-casual games go up,
Sure.
RMG, and often people pit each other against each other, but actually I think of it as like this investment coming in,
Sure.
right? If some guy in my platform is wearing a shirt with Winzo on it, it doesn't really hurt me, right? It gives him more money, and he can create 10 more influencers. You've seen one category blow up, really, on games, which is FPS. You've not seen any MMORPG really go up in that way. You've not seen any, role-playing games go up on the mobile side.
Sure.
I think those are to come. And if you think that how much money these guys made in the last year,
Yeah.
it's insane. And,
Yeah.
I just went to Korea, and every guy was introducing himself or herself to me. Most of them are doing billion-dollar top lines with $300, $400 million profits. हमारे यहाँ तो हम user के आगे चलते ही नहीं हैं. तो I think we are going to see those worlds in India in the next 5 years, 100%.
So do we get discount in the fees when I say that Anirudh is my friend from an influencer? Do I get a discount when I say Anirudh is my friend if I go to an influencer?
There all sorts of. There's no Indian platform without discounts. So
All right,
it's
cool.
part of our culture.
So Deependra, on that note, I would also like to know for dev tooling, developer tools, and what do you think there would be a lot of tools that would be developed which would help all these developers who are building games
You're
for
not
the
very clear. I'm sorry.
it's not clear also. So there seems to be a sound issue. So I was saying with developer tools which
yeah.
are being built
Yeah.
across, do you see a lot of developer tools will be built for, developers for getting their game to the market faster? And do you see that trend happening?
That is already happening, yes. So, for SaaS companies, traditional sectors have been marketing tech, HR tech, etc., right? But now we are seeing SaaS companies come up for games companies. And, these SaaS companies are saying that, hey, we will provide you an end-to-end platform where you can actually, measure which gamer is taking which journey. We map out the journey for you. And then we also tell you that, hey, this game or this feature or this level is seeing higher interest versus others, right? They're also developing tools in terms of being able to see, how to monetize it best, right? You have multiple in-game assets. Some of them are in-app purchases, some of them are, unlocking levels, some of them are buying inventory, etc. But everything has a different journey. So some companies have built brilliant tools for analytics internally, right? Others are not so good in terms of analytics, and therefore we are seeing a couple of SaaS companies, especially phenomenal work is happening in Europe, and some of the SaaS companies are being built in India also, where they are saying that yes, we'll provide you a platform to help you monetize, retain, engage. And so that is one part. Secondly, on developer tools, I think there's a whole ecosystem of partners who build tools, who build developer tools out there. And there's a big ecosystem of DevOps community as well, right? As I was talking about the training and certification piece earlier, who actually work with games companies either as full-time employees or some of them are doing it on a consultancy basis. And they're saying, okay, to help you build your game faster, we provide these services. Testing. Now there is a company in Southeast Asia which provides testing as a service. So they have a set of players distributed across the globe. You can choose your geography, you can choose your demographics, age, etc., and they will get your game tested. Alpha, beta, even full launch. And they are providing very, very detailed report and insights in terms of what works, what does not work, which features don't work. So I think the entire because of the growth in the gaming sector, the ancillary services piece is growing up equally fast as well.
Sure. Great. So, Saumya, one question, or before maybe I can ask that to you. How many of you are actually building on Web3 right now? Wow, great. So I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty on Web3 right now, Robbie, and I know Tegro is, you guys are doing something in the Web3 space, and so, but with all the policy and what do you think India should do from the policy standpoint to make this? And we don't want to miss Web3 bus, right? I mean, that's the intent.
So I think, I usually stay clear of policy. I usually think about first what's good for my players. And if it's inevitable that, this technology is going to be good for players, then I know it's inevitable that it'll also come to market. Like, hey, you can't stop. Like, the same talk was around free to play. Then the talk was about RMG, games of skill. Web3 is just another one of those. Something that's new is always rejected till things become more standardized, everybody understands it better. Our system will always reject something that's not very clear. Over a period of time, all of these things will become standards. Our goal was to be ahead of the curve and kind of understand these fundamentally so that we're actually building infrastructure for it way in advance. Sure. So I do see that, hey, somebody actually really owning his assets allows him to treat his spend in the game less as a expense and more maybe as an investment that he can recover. I think that's good for my player. Players are our North Star. Web 2, Web 3, eventually these lines will blur. It'll just be games, and that's really the market that we build for.
So certainly, and staying on the regulatory and Winzo is categorized as skill-based company, and we do come across a lot of policies and across that. So for a company like yours, do they, how do you guys see? India is done now. We have to look at other tier 1 countries like United States and UK and so on. How do you guys plan for that?
Of course, I think most companies in India right now are looking at themselves as not just company out of India serving India, but companies out of India serving the world, which is so beautiful. I mean, I kind of, I feel so blessed that I'm living in this era because there's so many entrepreneurs like the ones on this panel as well, who are just looking to kind of not look at boundaries and borders and thinking that there can be a product which can win the world, which is a very proud moment because India was always seen as a service industry in technology. And if we can build a consumer product, gaming technology, whatever the product would be, Web3, that can serve the world and can be a large, well adopted product, it would be a massively proud moment. Of course, with such a massive consumption going on in India, because we are one of the hottest market, large population, very well adopted gaming industry, largest gaming industry in the ecosystem world globally. There's a lot of attention from the regulators that the industry is seeing. Of course, there's a task force which is formed at a central level, and they're looking what real money, not real money, Web3, all aspects of it because of the nuances that it attracts. And he beautifully said that it's all noise and you have to focus on your end consumer finally, because if you get distracted, then you lose focus of addressing your consumer's need without any inhibitions, right? And I think that's a great perspective that I acquired right now in this panel. So thank you. But I do feel that that distraction will continue to be in our way for at least next 12 to 18 months, because nobody understands what's happening, and there's a lot that's happening.
Sure.
So
Great. Guys, we can take like couple of questions before. So can we have a mic here? While you guys getting the mic available, but I have like one last thing. If you have to give one advice to people who are starting up right now, 30 seconds, what would that be? Starting from Anirudh.
My advice is just start. I think, don't think too much. Just start. Start with why, but start.
Start with
Don't
why.
overthink it, especially if you work at a big company. You're taught to play defense, protect value, but not create value always.
Sure.
Creating value is just like football. You have to go and try something.
Sure.
And so don't worry so much. Just try things and things will happen and you'll learn. Trust yourself that you'll learn.
Correct. And depend.
Yeah, I think we are seeing a lot of games companies over-engineer, in terms of play to earn, NFTs, metaverse, whatever,
Sure.
right? And people are building great games, but they're over-engineering a little bit on the monetization piece and all. Games is a form of entertainment, right? Build a game which people want to play, which they will want to spend time with, and which entertains them. And I think everything else will follow.
Sure. And Saumya, you have any?
yeah, I think your startup starts the day your first version is pushed out. All the advices, everything else before that just would mean nothing. Your first advice will come from the first disgruntled consumer that you will come across when you will push the first product out. That's when the game starts. So start it. Push that product out.
Sure. And Robbie, do you have any?
Yeah, I made many games and a lot of them failed. So I'll actually give you contrary advice, which actually says, think about what are you good at? What are you uniquely bringing to the table? What's that unique insight that you have? And if you do that and focus on your startup on that, then nobody can beat you. So that's kind of great. That's kind of
Great advice. Do we have any questions in the audience? Well, I think none. Oh, there is one person. Remember the guy in the white jacket. Manav.
Thanks for sharing your insights on the state of the gaming industry right now. What do you think the future looks like for the Indian gaming industry? Is it more RMG, more Web3, more freemium? What do you guys think? I'd love to know that.
I mean, if I was to take that answer, I would say it's everything. When you have 600, 700 million users coming online, it's so big that everything is going to work. Like your niche community is larger than most countries' populations, most large markets. I mean, again, take what you're good at and own it.
Anyone else want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see many new games enter the industry. I think, if you look back, 4 years, 5 years back, there were many miracles that needed to happen. You needed to get cheaper internet. That miracle happened thanks to Jio. Then you needed a payment rails to be created. That miracle happened thanks to UPI. If you want your game to be marketed today, you can go to Winzo, you can come to Loco, your game will be marketed in no time. There are 600 million people willing to play games because they need to be entertained. So I think any game that you put out, whether you choose an RMG model, where you choose a Web3 model, you choose a combination, they can all work as long as they're entertaining. Games that fail are boring. That's it. That's the simplest truth. There's no need to complicate that part of it.
Deependra, you wanted to
I
comment?
want to give a very bad analogy. If tomorrow I have to start a restaurant, should I be asking that, whether I should start Indian, Italian, Chinese? Doesn't matter. There is demand for everything. Similarly, for games, people want to be entertained. It's the cheapest form of entertainment. It's the highest ROI when it comes to entertainment. It's available anytime, anywhere you want to be entertained. So just start your journey, build a game. I think all formats have a great success story ahead.
I like the restaurant analogy. Yeah. You have some.
I just want to share an anecdote, which is repetitive though. But when we started back in 2017, we used to pitch a platform for casual games to a lot of investors. They used to ask, but there's nothing like this in the West and anywhere. So will it work? And we didn't have an answer because, at times you are building something which is your unknown for that moment, but in future it's just going to be addressing a lot of need which was never even addressed. And yeah, we are hoping that it works. So that's what I wanted to share.
Great, guys. Thank you so much for, be part of this panel. And thank you so much for joining.